I'm JoEllen McCarthy, and I'm a lifelong learner and educator who believes in the power of read-alouds. I'm also the proud author of Layers of Learning, where I share my thinking around the ways we can use picture books to connect literacy and caring conversations. Together, let's connect our students to the stories, the people, and the possibilities for learning on and off the pages of their books. Everyone, welcome back to Behind the Book series by Stenhouse. I am JoEllen McCarthy, the lucky host who has the wonderful opportunity to interview authors and illustrators and the wonderful creators behind Heartprint Books. And I'm thrilled to say today I have the author and illustrator because this fabulous creator, Hudson Talbott, is joining us today. And his most recent work, after about 20 books, is a new book out with Nancy Paulson Books, an imprint of Penguin Books called A Walk in the Words. Welcome, Hudson.
Oh, thank you, JoEllen. It's so nice to be here with you.
I'm so happy that you're here.
Thanks. This is fun. This is nothing I love more than getting to share my book and talk about walks in the words with friends.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I'm fortunate enough to have read it, and I read it again and again and share it with teachers and students often. But for those of our viewers who haven't read the story yet, would you mind giving us a little book talk?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And no, I wouldn't mind. Of course not. So this book, all books kind of come from an author's heart, and so they're all a little bit autobiographical. But this one is quite literally my autobiography, to some degree, my story as a young reader. When I was a kid, coming up and learning to read and just not being very good at it, not nearly as good as everybody else in my class, and realizing that right away that I was the slowest kid in the class. And in some ways, I still am. I'm still a slow reader. But I figured out ways of compensating it for it. I figured out ways of hiding it. But most of all, I used it. I tried to use it to my advantage. And how I did that was that I love stories. I loved being read stories. I loved hearing stories. And I started to love telling stories. So I was telling my stories through pictures. And that led me to drawing and art and just falling in love with what I could do with pictures and painting and telling stories through pictures and drawing. And little by little, what I came to realize is that I could use words like I use colors and pencils. And if I started to think of words the way that I thought of the things that I knew and loved, which was paints and colors and pencils and crayons, I realized I could paint with words. I could make up my stories and use words as well as my art. And once I started thinking that way, that made me feel a lot more comfortable with words. And once I started feeling more comfortable with words, I realized I could look into books and find other words that I loved that would be really good to put into my stories. And pretty soon I was reading the stories that I was looking for other words, like I was mining those stories for my own stories. And little by little, I wasn't thinking about being afraid of reading anymore. I was just wanting to know what happened next in the story. And it freed me up. And I became a lover of words and a lover of stories and a lover of reading. And I finally came to realize, and it really took me a long time to realize, that it wasn't the words that were the scary thing. It wasn't the reading that was the scary thing. It was the pressure that I was putting on myself to be like everybody else, to be as fast a reader as everybody else was. And I just wasn't. I was good at some things they were good at some things. I wasn't as good as they were at some things, and they weren't as good as I was at some things. We're all different, and we all need to kind of respect who we are and what we are and what makes us who we are. And so that's one of the things that once I started realizing that's part of me. So what? It felt good, and it made me feel like those words and all those books, those were my friends, and I could lose myself in them, and I could use them the way that everybody does to spark my imagination and go off into wonderful lands that I never could get to before. And it just opened up worlds and worlds for me. And I'm seeing all those wonderful books behind you that really made me think of this. You know, whenever I go into schools and do school visits, and often they take place in libraries, and I always say to the kids, look around you. This is a treasure house of ideas and wonder and stories and wonderful things to spark our own imaginations. And, once I started thinking about that and got away from thinking about comparing myself to anybody else, it just liberated me. It made me free. And so that's what the book's about. The book is about, coming to find my own honoring and respecting and appreciating that I read at my own speed. And that's just fine. One other thing, JoEllen, that I want this book to do for kids, I hope, is to convey a sense of agency, a sense of self-empowerment that, at one point in the book, let me see if I can find it real quick. Here I am, lost in the woods, and thinking, what can I do to get out of here? Because I'm lost in a world of words. And I'm saying, I was good at picturing stuff. Maybe I could try picturing a way out. And this one big scary word has been following him around, overwhelm, which is always the problem I had more than anything else. It's that sense of overwhelm. And so here, what he's done, what I've done as a kid, is broken it off. So it only says whelm. And he's saying, I can whelm the words before they overwhelm me. And to me, I think that's what I really want to say. I want to say, kids, boys, girls, moms, dads, everybody out there, we've all got that power to determine our lives and determine the feeling that we have about ourselves. Nobody else can make you feel that way. You have a way that you can give yourself agency so that you can be proud of who you are. You can see that the way you do things is the way you should be doing things. And you find your way out of anything. Turn it to your advantage. And I just hope that comes through in the book. I wanted to make sure to get that in before we end it, JoEllen, because that I like the idea of empowering kids.
I get emotional about books and about the power of books and bringing stories that, can touch kids in my own heart and mind at the same time. And I think this book does that so well. Your story, as you were sharing your story, I was thinking about all the wonderful things and, the nuggets of advice and information giving kids, to not worry about what other people think, to be, looking inside your heart for those stories, to let books, lead you on the path of imagination and story and wonder, and just the fact that, you were able to overcome issues you had in school. But I think also what touches me so much knowing this story is that there are kids who we could insert any aspect of learning or life in place of what that challenge is for kids. And so to see this story, to see the way that you've overcome things and sharing the fact that we all can do this work, I think it's a beautiful thing. So thank you.
And also, well, thank you. And also, I want kids to think about what it is that they do love, that is their passion. Like for me, it happened to be art, but maybe they have a natural love for math or for sports or for music or something else. What I found was, it sort of just through osmosis. It's not like I sat down and calculated it, but basically what I was doing was kind of taking what I knew, applying what I knew about art and applying it to what was scary for me so that it wasn't so scary anymore. So, all the things, when I say like painting with words, for example, it's because I knew I loved painting and drawing and art, but you could take anything that you feel comfortable with and apply to something that you're not so comfortable with, to make it feel good for you, just to make it feel like it's your thing.
That's beautiful. I think so well said. And I think your book does that. And I think providing the opportunity to have the conversations for kids to recognize that we all have so many beautiful parts that make us who we are. And we have to love all of those parts equally. And some, to find the opportunity to talk about the strengths and the unique talents that we have and to really celebrate those. I know that I asked you before we started if there was a favorite page. This is one of my favorite pages, and I think we have the same favorite page. Do you want to share that?
Yes, because for me, this was really like what my life was about. I had friends. We played every afternoon. I grew up in just, nice, wonderful, white, middle-class suburbs of Louisville, Kentucky. And had plenty of friends to play with outside, but it was never enough for me. There was something that I wanted that I wasn't getting in my environment. And it was that curiosity about other worlds. My imagination was just, I always had a big imagination. And so when I was thinking of what am I going to do with this whole book, how can I tell my story, I thought doing it in the form of sort of what I think of as visual metaphors, And so every afternoon, after playing with my friends for a little while, I'd go home and draw and draw and draw and draw till dinner time. And it was really like diving into my own world. And that's what I'm doing here, kind of right into my world of cities of the future and monsters and horses, always a lot of horses. I grew up in Kentucky, so there was always wild horses and things like that in my pictures, and dragons and dinosaurs and all that.
The next page too, I think about, connecting the beauty of words with pictures. And quite literally, you do that on the next page. And that could encourage some students as well to play with words in that format and try to make a visual representation as they're learning new words or exploring the beauty of words, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. And that's a wonderful thing that my editor and I talked about a lot too. Savor the words. Here you can see like tall and small, mirror, mirror, birds made out of birds, so forth and so on. Horse, I like that one. But the scary part was when I had to string them together, which you see on the other side. And this is me. You see my eyes there. Everybody else is just reading along, turning the pages, and I'm still kind of laboring on the first one because, as you see here, I would start a long sentence and then my mind began to wander. And that's what happened. That's what always happened. I was slower than I wanted to be or than anybody else. And to this day, I need to still work at keep focusing my attention more than it comes. It's so natural to my partner and to my friends and so many other people that can just do that. For me, I love words and I love reading, but I have to put a little extra effort into coming to that next sentence, the next paragraph, the next page, the next book, whatever. Because I'm a visual person and my mind wanders. You know what used to happen. It used to happen to me a lot. Is that I would look at a page of text, and there's another picture in here that absolutely it was like this for me. I'm saying here, a whole page of text looked like a wall keeping me out. I love stories no matter how they're told. I'm just going to absorb them at my own rate.
You put a beautiful author's note in the book, which I think I have shared with teachers before too, because I think there's some lessons to be had, in terms of how we are approaching and supporting and really nurturing our students in their own literacy lives.
The author's notes says about how I came through it all, and fear no longer prevented me from finding my own way with words. I would go on to use them to express my point of view in writing the way that paint and pencils did in my art. There was a lot to explore. Curiosity had won. I hope that my story will help to heal those who bear similar scars to mine, and will empower young readers who are on their own journey toward literacy. So that really is my hope, and the reason why I did this book. I always love to say to kids about learning how to write stories. I realized that I loved it and I loved words, and now they pay me for it.
Well, that's a great message to send to kids. And I think it's just a gift that you share so much of yourself and your life and your experience. And I think that's an important message too in sharing books, because kids need to know that they can find their own stories and tell their stories, whether they're painful or joyful or, everything in between. And I think that this is such a beautiful way of looking at our literacy journeys and really getting kids to find and celebrate all the wonderful journeys that we're on with the ups and downs. And I thank you for that. Can you give us a sneak peek into anything that might be coming up next?
Oh, well, I'm a little bit superstitious about talking about things that I haven't done yet, because I don't like to take away from the energy of them. Two things that I will say. One is, what can I say that doesn't give it away? I've always loved mythology, Greek mythology, and Greek and Roman mythology. So it's going to be a project that has to do around that, but in a different way. It's not going to just be the classical thing. And the other one is about, how can I say that without giving it all the way?
Don't worry, you don't have to give it away. We will anxiously await and anticipate your next book, and we will be on the lookout for it. There's so much energy behind this book, and I'm so happy that it's doing well. And I hope that for the teachers who haven't had a chance to see it or haven't had a chance to dig in as deeply as we have through this behind the scene conversation and behind the book conversation, I hope that they will do that. And I hope it encourages kids to remember to keep reading, to keep writing, and to fall in love with words.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. And let me just add that if there are teachers watching and hearing us in our conversation right now, they're certainly welcome to go to my website and write to me. I've gotten several wonderful letters now from teachers, and with whole classrooms of kids asking me questions, and I'm always happy to share what I can, through email online. So please feel free.
Great. Thank you so much. We'll share all of that information, and thanks for joining us at Behind the Book. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Oh, it's my pleasure, JoEllen. Thank you.